Happy Sabbath to you. Tonight, I'm going to tell you a story. You can all listen, but it's more for some of you than for others. And then, I'm going to tell you some good news, and then I'm going to give you a Bible study, and that will be enough for one evening. First, the story. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, it was at Penang, so not terrible far away, there was a troop of monkeys. So there was a troop of monkeys there at Penang, and the monkeys had a goal. They were headed towards a tree. You know, monkeys like trees. But these particular monkeys had been cheating, eating some stuff in the garden they shouldn't eat over here. And to get from the garden to the tree, they had to go jump to a rock, climb down the rock, and climb over, and then climb up into the tree. So what direction are the monkeys going? Toward the tree. Why are the monkeys going toward the tree? It's because at Penang we have monkey-eating dogs. I mean, I'm not sure they eat monkeys, but I'm sure they bite them. I'm sure they chase them. I'm sure they kill them. And I'm just not sure about the eat part. But the monkeys know that we have the dogs. So the monkeys want to get to the tree to be safe. And this troop of monkeys did it monkey style. They go one monkey at a time. So you might have two monkeys here, but they're each one spaced. And the last monkey, when he was coming, all of his buddies had made it safely. He had the misfortune right about here that one of our dogs named Jackie came around the corner and saw him. Jackie saw the monkey on the ground. Now, do you know what makes a very excited dog? A monkey on the ground. Because a monkey in a tree is like teasing you. You can't get it. But a monkey on the ground, you can get it. And Jackie suddenly lost all her oldness, and she began to run like a young dog, and she caught right up to that monkey, and she bit it. And I thought, it happened right about here, I thought Jackie was going to kill the monkey. But what happened next was so amazing to me. As soon as Jackie was running towards this monkey, the monkey didn't know it was in danger yet because it was too oblivious. But all the monkeys in the tree saw Jackie coming. And you know what I would imagine monkeys would do? I can imagine them saying, "I'm glad I'm in the tree. Poor Roger, he's kind of late. Hurry up, Roger, you're in danger. Oh, poor Roger." That's what I could imagine monkeys doing. But as soon as the monkeys saw Jackie coming, they all began coming down the tree. And when Jackie bit the monkey, she looked up and saw a whole troop of monkeys coming towards her. And you know what Jackie did? She ran away. I think that we would have less people that would lose their way in our churches today if we had the wisdom of the monkeys. I think many times when we're safe in the tree, we see someone and we say, "Oh, that person, the devil's getting them. Oh, I wish they would do better. Come on, you can do better." I think many times we don't get personally involved in an emergency. And if we really did get personally involved in helping struggling people, we might just find that the courageous devil, if he was resisted a bit, you know what he might do? What happens when you resist the devil? You know, just like Jackie, he's just going to get out of there. Well, that's the story, and I'll have another one tomorrow if there's enough people around that are the age of the people who are here today. And now some good news. A week from the day after tomorrow, a group, not of monkeys, a group of colporteurs are coming to Penang. They're coming to live in that big mansion that was rented just about, I don't know, maybe 12 kilometers from here, something like that. In that place, they're coming. And I have already arranged to ship about 2,000 kilograms of books to that house. Some are there, some are coming, some are in my car, and others will be coming still. That's a lot of books. It is, altogether, it is just about 8,000 books. Just about. I think it's about how many they're going to sell in the 8 weeks they're here. So that's a tremendous amount of distribution. When they're here, I mean, I know you've had call porters in Malaysia for a long time. So I want to make a bit of contrast here so you know what's happening. When they get out their 5,000th book sometime in late July, when they get out that 5,000th book, how many of those books are going to be books that have the three angels' messages or have at least much of present truth in them? It'll be about 3,500 of those 5,000. It'll be by far the majority. 70 to 75% of those books will be Great Controversy or Ministry of Healing or part of Great Controversy or Desire of Ages or Steps to Christ. But mostly it'll be Great Controversy and Ministry of Healing. That'll be the majority of the books that go out. And that's going to be something a bit new for Malaysia. What's been happening now for many decades here is that if you get out 5,000 books, there's going to be in there about 70 to 100 that have the three angels' messages, and about 4,900 that have the health message or our family message. That's what's been happening for a long time. So this is, in a certain bit, something kind of new. Do you follow what I'm trying to say? To me, it's very exciting that people are going to get a chance here to know the three angels' messages. Some other little bit of news. It was only 2 weeks ago that the Great Controversy and Ministry of Healing were printed here in English. And they're now available at a very rational rate. And it was only a few months before that, they were printed here in Chinese. At the request of Elder Liang Fai, it was a new translation. I don't know Mandarin, and what I'm about to say, I cannot say I've personally investigated it because I have no way to do it. But according to Elder Liang Fai, this translation is a better translation than previous Mandarin translations of the Ministry of Healing. He says it is a step up. And so something new and precious is existing right here in Malaysia, and I'm just glad that resource is available. If there's anyone here who's able to actually independently verify whether that is factual or not, I would be happy for your independent verification, because I feel kind of funny saying something when I have just no way to know what I'm talking about. And now let's go to the Bible study. Turn in your Bibles to Revelation chapter 3. Revelation chapter 3 has a message that is very helpful in evangelism. You might ask, how is the Laodicean message helpful in evangelism? And let me just answer it before I forget to answer it. When someone is learning the precious truths that the Seventh-day Adventist Church has, truths about the Ten Commandments, and about God's mercy even in judgment, and about God's sanctuary work, that the work Jesus does as our high priest, when they're learning about all these things, it's very easy to assume that any church that knows this much must be full of holy people. I don't know if any of you ever grew up outside of an Adventist situation and worked your way into it from Buddhism or Taoism or something like that. But as you're learning, it's easy to imagine it must be that way. I mean, anyone who doesn't smoke and doesn't drink and pays tithe and doesn't eat pigs and isn't a Muslim at the same time must be a pretty holy person. But once you actually become an Adventist, sometimes what you find isn't precisely what you anticipated to find. Can anyone testify that this actually happened to you? Maybe you don't want to do it right here amidst all your friends or the people that you came and got to know at that point. But sometimes you could enter a congregation that isn't apparently much more holy than any other group of friends you ever had. In Revelation chapter 3, it really helps explain that in a way that doesn't lead to a great disillusionment with the church. Or let me say that another way. When someone you're studying with learns that the last day church has the truth but is unconverted, that the church at the end of time has the truth but really doesn't have a supernatural experience with Jesus, hasn't really been changed, when they see that with their own eyes in the Bible, and you can explain to them what you see in 1 Corinthians, that when a church isn't converted, it has lots of arguments and bitterness and squabbling. When you can show that to them, then what they see feels like a fulfillment of prophecy instead of like a terrible, distressing surprise. Your contacts and mine, like right now I'm thinking of Roji. Roji is a man in Borneo who I flew to see just over a week ago. He found a testimony on YouTube of a German citizen who converted to Seventh-day Adventism. She, under a pen name, put her testimony on YouTube about why she did it, which isn't the safest thing for someone to do in this day and age. But she did it, and Roji found it, and he watched all of it and began to study, and he requested that someone come and teach him about the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So I was there just over a week ago with him, and Roji right now is learning. He's learning a lot. But this will be one of the things he's going to learn, and it's going to help him a lot. It'll save a trouble at some point in his experience, because right now he is so on fire. I remember when we gave him a Bible just last week, he told me the next morning, I didn't sleep at all. I read it all night. Well, you've had a Bible for a long time and you haven't been reading it. I don't mean all of you or even half of you or even any of you. I don't know you, but I mean it's more the way it is. But he, the first day he had a Bible, he read it. And he said, I didn't understand much, but I had great peace. That's what he said. He was reading it. You're in Revelation 3 and we haven't read it yet, right? And I'm saying read the Bible and we probably should read it. Revelation chapter 3, look at verse 14. And unto the angel of the church of the Laodiceans write, These things saith the Amen, the faithful and true witness, the beginning of the creation of God. I know your works. So let me just try a quiz on you. When Jesus says to our church age, I know your works, is he saying something different or similar to what he says to other church ages? How many of you, does anyone here know the answer? Is it something different or similar to what he says to other church ages in Revelation? It's similar. It's the same thing he says to every church age before us. To every single one, he says, I know your works. So when he comes to us and says, I know your works, that's not special. I mean, it's not different. In that way, it's not special. He knows. But it is different in some ways, because when Jesus describes all the church ages leading up to ours, and if you've never looked at Revelation and have no idea what I'm talking about, here comes a really brief introduction. Revelation 2 to 3 divides up the last 2,000 years into 7 sections. It divides it up into 7 sections, and the last one is the one we're studying about this weekend. It's Laodicea. And I love to teach history, and I can tell you that history correlates with these 2 chapters in a way that's amazing, just like it is when you correlate history with the book of Daniel. You can look in the book of Daniel and see Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, an incredible prediction and how it was fulfilled. Well, you can look in Revelation and see the development of Christianity and how it was fulfilled. It's a similar type of prophecy, but it's about the church. When Jesus says to the church, I know your works, to most ages, he says something very positive first, and then he says something that they ought to improve. That's what he does to the first church. That's what he does to the third church. That's what he does to the fourth church. That's what he does to the fifth church. But it's not what he does to churches number 2, 6, and 7. To churches 2, 6, and 7, the pattern is different. In church number 2, he only says something positive. And to church age number 6, there's only something positive. Wouldn't you have liked to live in one of those church ages? I don't know if you wanted to live in this one. This age is the persecuted age. This is the age when the church was daring to do what had to be done, and that led to lethal persecution. It led to nearly the extermination of the church, and still the church grew. And that's a time when what Jesus said to the church is, he appreciated that that's the church of Smyrna. And God was so appreciative of the second church age. What about this church age number 6? In history, that's what we call the Second Great Awakening. It's the period right after the papal supremacy when the church around the world, when I say the church now, I'm referring to Christianity as a whole. I mean everything from Baptist to, well, not really Pentecostal because they weren't around at that time, but Baptist to Presbyterian to Methodist to Lutheran to Congregationalist, I mean the whole bit of them. That's when the churches woke up and began to do missions. 1799, 1800, 801, 1802, this is when the Bible was translated into more languages than in the 1800 years preceding those years. It was probably somewhere around the 10-year period beginning then that an evangelical missionary came to Malaysia. I don't know that. I never researched it. That's just the nature of how things were going at that time. That's when the church woke up and began to take the gospel to the whole world. It was an amazing time. And that's the time when Adventism was born. That's the time when you had people preaching about Christ's coming in India and in North Africa and in Europe and in North America. And even Lacunza got a head start in South America, but he died before the rest of them got going. But really, it was a great thing. It was to that church age that Jesus had nothing negative to say. But the seventh church is also different. Our church age is the only one of the 7 to whom Jesus says nothing positive about us in his introduction. We're the only one. It's this age only. So what that means practically, I haven't proven this to you, so you don't have to believe it yet, but it's the conclusion I'm going to try to lead you to. What this means practically is that you could be a Christian today in a Christian society with Christian friends and maybe go your whole life without encountering someone who's truly been born again. You might, or it might be you encounter 2 or 3 of them and think they're all strange. Just way out there, over the top, not rational in their experience. It means that you could really misjudge a lot of things because the Christianity around you is what you're using as your norm. I mean, as your standard of measurement. And if you're using Laodicea, our age as a standard of measurement, according to Jesus in Revelation 3, you're not using a very high standard. You're still there. Look at verse 15. I know your works, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish that you were cold or hot. So then, because you are lukewarm, and neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth. What does Jesus say to the last church age? The first thing he says is a threat. I'm not sure that's the proper English word for it, because the word threat almost implies a lack of likely follow-through. But here there's a certain follow-through if the conditions remain as they are. Certain follow-through. What Jesus says to our Christianity at our time is, I will not accept you as is. I will give you some time to change, and if you don't change, I will reject you. I don't accept what is. I will give you some time. If things don't change, I will reject you. Of course, ages don't go to heaven and ages don't go to hell. So when I say he says that to the last church age, what I really mean is he says that generally to Christians individually all over the planet. Certainly not to everyone. Some of them, there's no hope for them at all. And some of them are lively, real Christians. But we're talking in these messages about the generality. What's the normal thing? The average thing? The one that you find in most places, most people, that one. And if you're talking about that, what Jesus says to the Christians today is, I do not accept you as is. I'll give you some time. If there's a change, well, but if there's no change, you're going to be rejected. So at this point, if we weren't under like a spell, we would begin to feel a little nervous. Almost the same way that the disciples felt when Jesus said, one of you tonight is going to betray me. Do you remember what the disciples asked when Jesus said that? They began to whisper a lot. You remember what they were whispering? They're saying, is it me? Is it me? Is it me? That's what we sensibly should be thinking right now about this message in Revelation 3. Is it me? Am I the lukewarm one that is threatened with expulsion? Is it me? But the spell we're under gives us a different experience that goes something like this. Is it you? Is it you? Is it you? Can you hear the difference between those two experiences? They're so different. Only one of them has any hope. Verse 17. Because you say, I am rich and increased with goods and have need of nothing, and you do not know that you are wretched. We'll talk more tomorrow about this verse 17, but the picture I want you to see here at the beginning of verse 17 is that even though the church is in a terrible condition, an unacceptable condition, we overall do not know that fact. We are not aware of that fact. So now let me draw something else. I don't know. I suppose you can see the black. Can you see the blue and red? So what I've showed you so far is a summary of Revelation chapters 2 and 3. And now we're looking more at chapter 3. I want to draw a little graph for you. This graph represents It could represent all the Christians in the world, but just because I want to know what I'm talking about, I'm going to say it represents the Seventh-day Adventist. It would probably be about the same thing if it was everybody. But in this case, who is it? Seventh-day Adventist, because that's where I know more about what I'm talking about. This represents the portion of the graph of people that almost every day pray and study their Bible. And by say pray, I mean something more than 90 seconds to 2 minutes. I mean people that really have a devotional experience. Kind of like that. Now, I didn't put any numbers up there, so you can't say the statistic is wrong, right? I didn't put them up there. But that would be my general picture. I think if I ask 100 Adventists, in the last 20 days, how many days have you had real Bible study, like more than 5 or 10 minutes, and real prayer time more than 2 or 3 minutes? I think I would find not many that would say that they've done that almost all of those 20 days. It's easy in this situation to kind of think like this if you have I don't want to say the fortune, because fortune has zero to do with this. If you happen to be in the black, it's real easy to think that these are the lukewarm ones and these are the acceptable ones. That idea is easy. It's easy to come to it. It's very natural to come to it. It's very comfortable to come to it. It's precisely the conclusion that the Pharisees came to. They concluded that they weren't really up at the high level of holiness that was marked out, like they thought almost no one is keeping the Sabbath properly. That was the Pharisee opinion about the Sabbath. But they thought at least they're the ones who are making a really great effort. And in that regard, they considered the publicans and the harlots and the wool carders and, everyone else to be right out here, the whole bunch. And they figured even though only a minority might be blessed, at least they would be in the minority. What I'd like to show you this evening, next, in the Bible, is that this is the group to which Jesus speaks. Because this group isn't even listening. That when Jesus comes, he's speaking to the group in the black. And it's that group that thinks it is rich and increased with goods and in need of nothing. The group out here, many of them, don't feel rich and increased with goods and in need of nothing. They feel like something's wrong and they're not sure what, and they're kind of worried, and they ought to be. But we're talking about what Jesus says to this group. Look in your Bible at Isaiah 58. Isaiah chapter 58, looking at verse 1. Isaiah 58, verse 1. It says, "Cry aloud. Don't hold back. Lift up your voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgressions." So you see the possession there. Who owns the people? God does. Who owns the transgressions? The people do. And, well, if you own me and I own something, that might be an issue for you if you don't like the something. Show my people their transgressions, and the house of Jacob their sins. Yet they seek me, what does it say? What do? They seek me. How often do they seek me? Do they like doing that? It says they delight to know my ways. They do. They like it. They enjoy devotions. They're like a group of people, let's say we, We are like a group of people that really keep God's commandments. That's what it says next. As a nation that did righteousness and had not forsaken the ordinance of their God. Here we are, we're the commandment keepers, the ones that have devotions every day and love spiritual meetings on mountaintops. We're the ones. We really like it. And the good news here is that Jesus calls us whose people? My people. That's the only good news. Because what he says is, show them their transgressions. Look at verse 3. Why have we fasted, we say, and you don't pay any attention? That question is coming from what we call the sanctuary message. It's the idea that today we live in the judgment time. If this is a new idea to you, ask your elders to explain it. But we live in a time when there's a judgment going on in heaven. This is a judgment time, and in this period, if we've studied the Old Testament about this, know that we should be searching our hearts. The Bible calls it fasting in several places. It's a symbol of the work we do searching our hearts. And now what's being asked here is, why have we fasted and you don't pay any attention? The answer is, behold, in the day of your fast, you are seeking for pleasure, and you are hard on your workers. I'm just paraphrasing that last phrase, maybe to make it easier for some to understand. Behold, you fast for strife and debate, and to smite with the fist of wickedness. Adventist? No, it's not just Adventist, but again, that's who I know about. People, we like to argue. Probably men more than ladies like to argue. Ladies also have vices that they have more than men. But this particular one, the men have it more. We like to argue. And if you'd like to know how to get more men involved in church, have more doctrinal activity. Sentimental religion doesn't do it for men. They need something substantial. But here Jesus says, you like to fight. I heard a story. I didn't even verify if it's true because I think it's true 1,000 times every year. It seemed so obviously true to me that it didn't matter if the story was true. The story was that a couple was studying, they were taking Bible studies through Amazing Facts. They learned a lot. They decided it was time to visit the Adventist church. They visited, they liked the congregation all right, but then they began to discover the controversies going on about doctrinal things. And they saw on Facebook what people say to each other about these doctrinal things. And frankly, it's not nice. And there's a lot of rotten bitterness there. And when they saw all that, they just said, wow, the wool has been removed from our eyes. We realized this cannot be the remnant church. It is the remnant church, but it ought not to be like that. And Jesus says something about it, but it might be the people who are most skillful at that might be in the black. Do you follow what I'm trying to say? And if you don't like to argue, don't comfort yourself too well because you might be in the pink. Of course, these people might not get too much into any doctrinal arguments. I mean, they have no basis with which to score a point. But that should not be much comfort to them. Isaiah 58, we're going to look at verse 5. Is it the type of fast that I have chosen, a day for a man to afflict his soul? Is it to act as if you're very sad and to spread sackcloth and ashes under you? Will you call this a fast, an acceptable day to the Lord? So probably none of you are doing anything like that. I don't say that we never do anything showy. I have a little more income than some people. Actually, I have quite a bit more income than most people at Anon, because there are some people that support me just by giving me money quite often in the United States. So I made about the equivalent of 40,000 ringgits last year, which in Malaysia is pretty good, but in the United States is pretty lousy. But since I live in Malaysia now, it's pretty good. So I had someone come up to me yesterday, totally unexpected, and he was raising money for a project in Myanmar. And I gave him $100. That would be like, that's not a real serious contribution for me. Because I told you how much I earn, so that's just not a hardship. But for him, it was a pretty significant gift to receive. So he was quite happy with it. And when I had just given it to him, a thought occurred to me. And I stopped him before he went out of my house. I said, wait a minute. Make sure when you build that church in Myanmar that my name is not on any window, not on any door, not on any plaque, not on any pew. I don't want my name on any door or any window or any plaque or any pew. I made him make sure that he would make sure about that. Do you follow what I'm trying to say? Because I've noticed something as I've traveled here in Asia, that that people cancel out their charity. Do you know what I mean by that? Cancel out their charity? I mean that when you give with your right hand, your left hand shouldn't know what you're doing. Well, I kind of risked it and told you about my $100, but I'm okay to cancel that $100 out. That's okay for me. I'm trying to illustrate something for you. What I'm trying to say is that when you do something for show, you don't get any credit from heaven. That's the message of Matthew 6. What Jesus said there is when you do it for show, the only credit you get is the show. That's it. Nothing. Isaiah 58, what it says here is that many people their religion is for a show. Verse 6 is where Jesus says what he'd rather you do. He says, "Is not this the fast that I have chosen, to loose the bands of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, to let the oppressed go free, and that you break every yoke?" What is Jesus looking for from our church age? He's not looking for a theoretical correctness. He's looking for a practical service. He's looking that we would be putting ourselves out for the spiritual benefit of people who have a need, either a physical need in verse 6 or a spiritual need in verse 7, like an addiction or depression or oppression or marriage problems, where whatever the case may be, giving people help when they need it, that's the very effort that could revive Laodicea. Now, I've talked almost my entire limit of time, and I haven't even got to my main point. I'm not going to go over time. I'm just going to say my main point, and then I'll be happy. My main point is that we really could think that other Seventh-day Adventists are the Laodiceans in danger of being lost, and really miss out on the reality that we ourselves could very likely be as unconverted as anybody else and have never experienced a legitimate, real, born-again experience. Or perhaps we experienced it 14 years ago and have already lost it. It could be that that is our situation. And if that is our situation, we're in bad straits, and we need to have a conversion or a reconversion and a series of reconversions. I've been reading a lot. That's normal. But for the last couple months, I've been reading in that app, the blue one called EGW2. It's not the red one that you've had around for quite a number of years. How many of you know about the EGW2, the blue app? It looks like only 2 of you, so let me advertise it. It's free, and unlike the red one, it has all of the letters and all of the manuscripts that have ever been written. They were all released, and now you can read them all, and you can have them all on your phone, and it's free. It's just amazing. So I just, a couple months ago, began reading through all the letters, right from 1844, and today I'm in 1873. So I've gone through about 30 years. Let me just summarize in closing some of my observations so far. When Ellen White writes to J.N. Andrews, or to J.N. Loughborough, or to her husband, James White, the letters often have a very solemn, serious sound, as if those 3 men are in danger of being lost. But when Ellen White writes to other people about those men, her letters have a sound of great enthusiasm for their work and energy and the great things they're getting done. It's a very different picture. The picture she writes about them is very positive, and the picture she writes to them is very serious. Well, that's not just true about Loughborough and Andrews and White. It's true about people in general that she writes the letters to, but those are just the ones whose names you might know. That's why I mentioned them. And as I'm reading them, I come routinely, almost every day now, to the idea where I wonder, have I been born again? Where I wonder that for myself. Or if I have, maybe I've been born again 100 times, but how about right now? Because that's just as relevant a question. When I read those letters, I see an evidence that God would like to have such a supernatural, real experience with us, so real and so vibrant and so full, that we would frequently be filled with the power of the Spirit, that we would frequently have experiences in church where people would be led to tears, where there would be conversions and backsliders would suddenly see something bright where they saw darkness before. It looks like there's something real that isn't what I experience myself. The Laodicean trick is that while we're doing better than average, to think we're doing good enough, and to settle before we have a real conversion. The trick is that because we're doing so much better than average, to really kind of settle down on our lees and just hope for the best and figure that better than average will get you past the test usually in life, when really God never gave us any reason to settle down. What he gave us was a reason to buckle down and to check and see and to plead for something different and to ask for revival and to ask for the Spirit and to really deal honestly with our own soul, and where there is a plague spot, to not play with it, but to deal with it. I don't say that if you feel like you're unconverted, it's proof that you aren't. It seems true that some people who are experiencing Jesus in a lively way every day still feel quite insecure about their experience. And I do sometimes find those letters in my reading, a letter that's all bright, almost always to someone whose name I've never heard before, and never find another letter. A letter that just says, God approves and appreciates and wants to encourage you. You are accepted. Don't worry. It's all right. It's going to be okay. There are letters like that, but it's like 1 out of 50, not like 3 out of 8. So all we've said tonight, all I've said to you, first, if you do see a dog biting a monkey, get out of the tree. Hurry up. The second thought is that a good thing is coming to Penang. Something different. Be glad about that. The third thought is please, tonight, tomorrow morning, ask that question to God. Is it me? Is it I? Is it possible that I am not a lively stone, that I don't have a real Christian experience, even though I think I do? Please be asking that question. It's very healthy. Let's kneel for a closing prayer. Our Father in heaven, I want to thank you publicly that you were able to save Nebuchadnezzar, that you found a way to save Peter, that you found a way to reach Paul and to finish the work in him you started. And I ask a gift for us, even if we are lukewarm, that you, by your mercy and through the power of your Spirit, would give us a different experience, something that could be illustrated by ointment and a white raiment and gold, that you would come and live with us and eat with us and make room for us at your table. We don't deserve any such gift, but we surely know that persons just like us need it. And since it might be us also, would you please give it to us? I ask in the name of Jesus. Amen.